"Make love with me every day and you will never go hungry again." That is what he said to the young woman with no past. But in her body, he saw a shadow he knew all too well. And loving became a blood pact. If you like stories of love and romance, watch until the end and you won't regret it. Subscribe to this channel and leave your comments saying where you are listening to this beautiful story from. We continue. When London awakens, shrouded in its urban haze, Claire walks through the city centre with silent steps, as if occupying a borrowed space in the world. At 22, she carries a youth eroded by losses that would age any soul. Living on the street doesn't shame her any more than the feeling that no one truly sees her. Since the death of her younger brother Luke, in a hit-and-run on the M25 that fate seemed to have orchestrated as a mockery, Claire has existed on the surface of things, like a lost musical note that can't find its place on the score of life. The morning is cold, typical of a London winter, and she huddles in the shabby coat she found in a thrift shop in Shoreditch weeks ago. In her worn-out backpack, she carries a notebook with yellowed pages, where she writes excerpts from books found in the trash of the second-hand bookshops on Charing Cross Road, and a hope she can no longer name. Her virginity isn't purity, as some might romanticize. It's a defense, a high wall built between her body and anything that could hurt her once more. On this Tuesday morning, Claire settles on the doorstep of the old Albion bookstore on Shaftesbury Avenue, closed for months due to bankruptcy. The place has become her favorite refuge, a sanctuary of literary memories where she can still smell the phantom scent of the books that once filled those shelves. It is there, sitting on the cold ground with her back against the dusty display window, that she opens her worn copy of Tess of the d'Urbervilles, found in a bin near University College London. The words of Thomas Hardy dance before her eyes, tired from the irregular sleep of life on the streets. Tess and Angel Claire materialize in her mind like old acquaintances, and for a few minutes, Claire manages to forget the hunger twisting her stomach and the cold penetrating her bones. Her fingers tremble slightly, not just from the cold, but from the emotion she can still feel when a beautiful sentence strikes her like lightning. It is then that a shadow falls over the pages of the book. Claire slowly lifts her gaze, blinking against the morning light, and finds a tall man watching her with a disturbing intensity. He is standing there a few feet away, as if studying a painting in a museum. The man must be in his early 50s, with perfectly combed grey hair and a dark, impeccably tailored suit that screams expensive brand even to someone who knows nothing about fashion. But it's his eyes that draw attention, dark, deep, and filled with an ancient sadness that seems to rival her own. For a moment that stretches like an eternity, they just stare at each other. Claire feels something strange, a mixture of curiosity and unease, as if this man knew her from a place she can't remember. He shows no pity, no disgust, none of the judgments she is used to seeing on people's faces when they notice her. Instead, there is something she can't decipher, a kind of troubled recognition. The man takes a step toward her, and Claire can smell the expensive cologne emanating from his presence, something woody and sophisticated that clashes completely with the degraded urban environment around them. His shoes are Italian leather, she notes, and probably cost more than she has seen in her entire life. "Are you reading Thomas Hardy?" he comments, his deep, polite voice carrying an accent she can't quite place but which sounds refined. "I am," Claire replies simply, closing the book and pressing it to her chest in an instinctive gesture of protection. He observes her for a few more seconds, as if making an important decision. The traffic on Shaftesbury Avenue flows around them. People hurry to work. The world continues its frantic motion, but there, in that small space in front of the closed bookstore, time seems suspended. "What's your name?" he asks, but there's something in the way he phrases the question that suggests he might already know the answer. "Claire," she replies after a hesitation. She doesn't usually give her real name to strangers, especially well-dressed men who appear out of nowhere, but something about him makes her feel that lying would be pointless. He nods, as if this confirms something he already knew. "Claire," he repeats, and the name sounds different in his voice, heavier, laden with meanings she doesn't understand. "And you are," she ventures, but he doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he looks at the window of the closed bookstore, at the faded posters still advertising releases from months ago. "Arthur," he finally says. "Arthur Blackwood." The surname resonates in Claire's mind as something familiar, but she can't place where she might have heard it before. Maybe in the newspapers she sometimes flips through at Irene's newsstand, the old woman who sometimes gives her a bread roll when there's one left over from the market. Or maybe it's just the strange feeling this encounter is stirring in her. Arthur Blackwood looks at her one more time, and Claire realizes he seems to be fighting an internal battle, a decision that torments him. When he finally speaks again, his words come out like a sentence delivered by a judge. "I have a proposition for you." Claire feels her heart race, but not with fear. It's curiosity, a dangerous and irresistible curiosity she hasn't felt for anything or anyone in months. She remains silent, waiting. Arthur takes another step closer, now near enough for her to see the fine lines around his eyes, the marks of a life that wasn't as easy as his expensive clothes might suggest. His voice is low when he continues, as if sharing a secret that shouldn't be spoken aloud. "You seem intelligent, educated, but you're in a difficult situation. It's not a question. It's a statement. I can change that." "In exchange for what?" Claire asks, her voice firmer than she expected it to be. She's not naive. The streets teach you quickly that nothing in life is free, especially offers from rich men. Arthur hesitates for a moment, as if the words he is about to say are difficult even for him. When he finally speaks, it's with a brutal frankness that catches Claire off guard. "I want you to come with me every day. I will take care of all your needs, food, clothes, a safe place to sleep. In return, you will give me your company, your presence, everything." The word everything hangs in the air between them, laden with implications that don't need to be verbalized. Claire feels a wave of heat rise up her neck, but it's not shame. It's something more complex, a mixture of shock, indignation, and, to her own surprise, a hint of excitement that leaves her confused. "Are you proposing I be your—" she begins, but can't finish the sentence. "I'm proposing an agreement," Arthur corrects, his voice maintaining the same controlled calm. Clear and direct, no romantic lies, no false promises of love. Just honesty about what each of us needs. Claire studies him intently. There's something about him that deeply intrigues her. It's not just the obvious money or the power that emanates from his presence. It's the sadness she recognizes in his eyes, a familiar pain that echoes her own. It's the way he doesn't try to soften his proposal with euphemisms or cheap seductions. It's the raw honesty of someone who, like her, has reached a point where pretending the world is beautiful has become impossible. "Why me?" she asks, genuinely curious. "London is full of women, many in better situations than mine, I'm sure." For the first time since he appeared, Arthur seems genuinely surprised by the question. He looks at her as if he's seeing something he didn't expect to find. "Because you didn't ask me for money," he replies after a moment. "Because you didn't pretend not to understand me. Because you're reading Thomas Hardy while sitting on the pavement of a London street, and yet you ask why me, instead of immediately accepting." Claire feels something stirring inside her, a force she hasn't felt in a long time. It's not love nor desire, it's recognition. The recognition that perhaps for the first time in months, someone is truly seeing her. "And if I say no," she asks, testing him, "then I'll walk away, and you'll continue with your life. We'll never see each other again," he replies without hesitation. "I'm not the kind of man who insists where he isn't welcome." The simplicity of the answer disarms her. Claire remains silent for several minutes, the book still pressed against her chest as she processes the offer. She thinks of Luke, of how he always said she was too smart to settle for scraps. She thinks of the cold nights sleeping on park benches, the constant hunger, the feeling of always being on the margins of the world. But she also thinks of the danger a proposal like this represents, of the vulnerability of placing herself in the hands of a man who is clearly used to having control over everything around him. She thinks of the risks of disappearing completely, of becoming just another sad story that no one will remember. "How long?" she finally asks. "As long as you want," Arthur replies. "If you decide you don't want it anymore, you can leave whenever you wish. I am not a jailer. And the rules? Because I imagine there are rules." An almost imperceptible smile touches his lips. "You are indeed intelligent. Yes, there are rules. Nothing you can't abide by if you choose to accept. But we would discuss those in private should you accept my offer." Claire closes her eyes for a moment, feeling the cold morning breeze of London on her face. When she opens them again, she finds Arthur still waiting patiently, without pressure, without insistence. Just waiting. "All right," she says finally, her voice surprisingly steady. "I accept." Something changes in Arthur's expression when she speaks those words. For a fleeting instant, she sees something that could be relief or perhaps gratitude. But the expression vanishes so quickly, she wonders if she imagined it. "Is there anything else you need to get?" he asks, glancing at the small backpack at her feet. Claire shakes her head. "This is all I have." Arthur extends a hand to help her up, and when their fingers touch, Claire feels an electric current shoot up her arm. It's not physical attraction. It's something deeper and more unsettling, as if that touch confirms a connection she doesn't understand, but somehow always knew existed. He guides her to a black BMW parked a few streets away. The car is discreet, but Claire can tell it's incredibly expensive. The interior smells of leather and expensive men's cologne, and when Arthur starts the engine, low classical music begins to play. "Where are we going?" she asks, as he navigates the dense traffic of the central district. "An apartment I keep in Mayfair," he replies, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. It's small but comfortable. And private. Claire notices he didn't say my apartment or our home. He said an apartment I keep, as if it were just another property in a vast portfolio. The distinction intrigues her. As they travel through the streets of London, Claire watches Arthur drive. His hands are elegant but masculine, with visible veins that suggest age and experience. He wears a watch that she's sure costs more than a car. Everything about him screams wealth and power, but there's something more. An underlying tension, as if he's always on guard against something only he can see. "Do you do this often?" she asks suddenly, surprising herself with the question. "Do what?" "Rescue troubled young women from the streets." Arthur looks at her in the rearview mirror, and for a moment their eyes meet. "No," he says simply. "You're the first." The answer should reassure her, but instead it only deepens the mystery. Why her? Why now? What is it about her that caught the attention of a man who could clearly have any woman he wanted? 20 minutes later, they pull up in front of an elegant building in Mayfair. It's not the most luxurious in the area, but it's clearly expensive and exclusive. Arthur guides her through the lobby to a private elevator that requires a special key. "Penthouse?" Claire asks as they ascend. 12th floor, he corrects. The penthouse would be too obvious. Another piece of the puzzle that is this man. He has the money for a penthouse but chooses something more discreet. Why? When the elevator doors open, Claire feels as if she's stepped into another world. The apartment is spacious and impeccably decorated in neutral tones, whites, greys, a few touches of black. Everything is too clean, too organized, as if no one actually lives there. The enormous windows offer a stunning view of the city, but the heavy curtains are partially drawn, creating an atmosphere of artificial intimacy. "This will be your home for the time being," Arthur says, watching as she visually explores the space. "There are clothes in the bedroom closet that should fit you. The bathroom is fully equipped. The kitchen has everything you could possibly need." Claire walks slowly through the living room, touching surfaces, absorbing details. There are paintings on the walls, reproductions of classics, nothing too personal. The bookshelf has books, but when she gets closer to examine them, she realizes they are mostly technical volumes on finance and economics. No literature, no fiction. "You don't like novels?" she asks, running her finger along the spines of the books. "I don't usually have time for fantasy," Arthur replies, but there's something in the way he says it that suggests there might be more to the story. Claire continues exploring, and then stops in front of a black grand piano positioned near the window. It's a beautiful piece, clearly expensive and well cared for, but as she gets closer, she notices the keys are covered in a thin layer of dust. "Do you play?" she asks. Arthur stiffens for a moment. "No," he says quickly. "The piano was here when I bought the apartment." It's a lie, Claire is absolutely certain, though she can't explain how. Something in the way he averts his gaze, how his shoulders tense when she mentions the piano, screams that there's a story there he doesn't want to share. "I'll show you the bedroom," Arthur says, abruptly changing the subject. The bedroom is as immaculate as the rest of the apartment. The bed is enormous, with white cotton sheets that Claire is sure cost more than she earned in months when she could find odd jobs. The closet is full of women's clothes in various sizes, dresses, blouses, skirts, all in neutral tones and from expensive brands. "How did you know my size?" Claire asks, running her hand over a dress that looks like it was tailor-made for her. "An educated guess," Arthur replies, but again Claire feels there's something he's not telling her. She turns to face him, and for the first time since they met, they are alone in an intimate space. The reality of what she has agreed to do hits her with full force. This man, this elegant and mysterious stranger, expects them to. "Now?" she asks, her voice sounding smaller than she intended. Arthur studies her for a long moment. "You're afraid," he observes. "It's not a question." "Should I be?" He takes a step closer, and Claire can feel the warmth emanating from his body, can smell his expensive masculine cologne. When he raises his hand and gently touches her face, she flinches. "No," he says softly. "Not of me. Never of me." There's something in the way he says it that makes Claire believe him. Against all logic, against all the self-preservation instincts she developed living on the streets, she believes him. "Then yes," she whispers. "Now." Arthur kisses her slowly, almost reverently, as if she were something precious that could break if he wasn't careful. His lips are soft and warm, and Claire feels her body responding in ways she didn't expect. When they part, she realizes her hands are shaking. "Have you ever—" Arthur begins to ask. "Never," Claire answers honestly. Something flashes across his face. Surprise, perhaps concern. Definitely something that could be tenderness. "Then we'll go slowly," he murmurs, kissing her forehead. "We have time." And so, on the golden afternoon of a London Tuesday, Claire gives not just her body but something much deeper to a man she barely knows. When Arthur touches her, it is with a gentleness that surprises her, a patience that completely contrasts with the image of ruthless power he projects to the world. Later, as they lie in the growing darkness of the room, Claire realizes that none of this feels as transactional as she expected. There is a strange intimacy between them, a connection that goes beyond the agreement they made. When Arthur holds her, she feels as if she's come home after a long journey. But even in this moment of relative peace, Claire can't shake the feeling that there are enormous secrets behind Arthur Blackwood's dark eyes, secrets that somehow are connected to her in ways she doesn't yet understand. As he sleeps beside her, Claire lies awake staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of story she has just stepped into, and why, despite all the mysteries, she feels as if she's always known this day would come. Outside, London continues its frantic dance, but here, in this secret apartment in Mayfair, two strangers begin a journey that will change both of their lives forever. The days that follow take on a rhythm Claire never imagined possible. For the first time in months, she wakes up in a soft bed, with clean sheets and the faint scent of expensive soap still clinging to her skin. The Mayfair apartment becomes a bubble suspended in time, where the basic worries of survival, food, shelter, safety, simply cease to exist. Arthur appears every day at precisely 2 in the afternoon. No earlier, no later. Claire learns to recognize the sound of his key in the private elevator, the specific rhythm of his footsteps in the hallway. He never calls to say he's coming, but somehow she always knows. In their first few encounters, there's a strange formality between them. Arthur is gentle, but distant. He treats her with a courtesy that borders on ritualistic, as if they were following a long-established protocol. They make love, because Claire quickly learns that's what it is, much more than transactional sex. But afterward, Arthur immediately gets dressed and sits in the armchair near the window, watching her in silence. "You don't have to stay," Claire says one Thursday, after realizing he had remained there for nearly an hour just looking at her. "I know," Arthur replies, "but I want to." It's a small confession, but one that reveals something important about him. This man, who clearly commands a financial empire, who has more money than he could spend in a lifetime, chooses to spend his afternoons watching a 22-year-old woman read books in his bed. Claire develops her own routine. In the mornings, she explores every corner of the apartment with the curiosity of a detective. There are strange details everywhere that don't make sense for a place that is supposed to be just a sexual hideaway. The kitchen is fully equipped with expensive appliances, but when Claire opens the refrigerator, she finds only water, champagne, and some fruit that was clearly placed there recently. It's as if someone tried to make the place look lived in, without truly understanding how normal people live. On the living room bookshelf, among the technical books on economics, she finds a single volume of poetry, John Keats' Selected Poems. The book is visibly worn with several dog-eared pages and notes in the margins, written in a delicate feminine handwriting. When Claire opens it, a bookmark falls to the floor, a small photograph of a beautiful woman with dark hair and sad eyes. The woman in the photo has an elegant, melancholic beauty. Her eyes are large and expressive, and there's something in the way she smiles that suggests a familiarity with pain. Claire studies the photo for several minutes, feeling a strange sense of recognition she can't explain. "Did you find something interesting?" Arthur's voice makes her jump. She hadn't heard him come in, and when she turns, he's standing at the entrance to the living room, watching her with an expression she can't decipher. "Sorry," Claire says quickly, closing the book and trying to put the photo back, but Arthur raises a hand to stop her. "You can keep it," he says, but his voice sounds strange, tense. "If you want." "Who is she?" Claire asks, looking at the photo again. For a long moment, Arthur doesn't answer. He walks over and sits on the sofa, gesturing for Claire to join him. When she settles beside him, he takes the photo from her hands and studies it as if seeing it for the first time. "Helen," he finally says. "She was my wife." The past tense of the verb hits her immediately. "Was?" "She died 2 years ago," Arthur replies, handing the photo back to Claire. "An accident." But there's something in the way he says accident that makes Claire suspect the story is more complicated than that. She watches his face, noticing how his muscles tense, how his eyes avoid hers when he speaks of his dead wife. "I'm sorry," Claire says sincerely. Arthur nods but doesn't reply. Instead, he gets up and walks to the window, looking out at the city below. The silence stretches between them, heavy with unspoken things. "She liked poetry," Arthur finally continues, still with his back to Claire. "Especially Keats. She said he understood that love and sorrow were the same thing." Claire feels a tightness in her chest. There's something in Arthur's voice, a vulnerability he tries to hide but that bleeds through the edges of his words. She gets up and goes to him, gently touching his arm. "You loved her very much," she states. "It's not a question." "I thought I did," Arthur replies, and there's a bitterness in his voice that Claire didn't expect. But love can be a dangerous thing. It can blind you to the truth. Before Claire can ask what he means, Arthur turns and kisses her with a desperate intensity, as if trying to erase some painful thought. They make love right there in the living room, against the window overlooking London, and Claire feels that there's something different this time, an urgency, almost a desperation that wasn't there before. Afterward, while Arthur sleeps on the sofa, Claire returns to the bedroom with Helen's photo in her hands. She places it on the bedside table and stares at the dead woman's face. There's something unsettling about the resemblance between them, not physical but something more subtle. The sadness in their eyes, perhaps, or the way they both seem to carry a weight heavier than they should. That night, Claire has strange dreams. She's in a large, dark house searching for something she can't name. Music is playing somewhere in the distance, a melancholic melody that seems familiar, but she can't identify it. In the dream, she knows there's someone else in the house, someone watching her, but every time she turns to look, she only finds shadows. She wakes with a start at 3 in the morning, her heart pounding. The apartment is silent, but she has the strange feeling that she's not alone. Claire gets up and walks to the living room, expecting to find Arthur, but the apartment is empty. It's then that she notices something she hadn't seen before. The piano, which she had always assumed was just decorative, has its lid slightly ajar. Claire approaches slowly and discovers a piece of sheet music on the keys, Debussy's Clair de Lune. The music is marked with annotations, and on the first page there is a dedication written in the same delicate handwriting as the poetry book. "For A, who taught me that beauty can exist even in sadness. With love, Helen." Claire feels a chill run down her spine. Why did Arthur lie about the piano? Why did he say it was in the apartment when he bought it, when it's obvious it belonged to his wife? She flips through the sheet music and finds other notes, small messages and observations that Helen left for her husband. "You play this part with such emotion," is written in one passage. "Don't forget to breathe between the movements," in another. They are the small intimacies of a marriage, evidence of a shared life that Arthur seems desperate to hide. Claire quickly closes the sheet music when she hears the key in the elevator. Arthur appears at the door a few minutes later, carrying bags of food from an expensive restaurant. "I thought you might be hungry," he says, as if it's perfectly normal to show up at 3:30 in the morning with dinner. "You have a key," Claire observes. "It's my apartment," Arthur replies, but he doesn't look her directly in the eye. They eat in silence, but Claire feels that there's something different in the air between them. Arthur seems nervous, as if he's waiting for her to ask something he doesn't want to answer. "Arthur," Claire finally says, "why did you lie about the piano?" He stops eating and looks at her for a long moment. "What do you mean? You said the piano was here when you bought the apartment, but it obviously belonged to Helen." Arthur's face shuts down completely. He puts his fork down on the table and leans back in his chair, studying Claire with an expression she can't read. "You're investigating my life," he says, "and it's not a question." "I'm trying to understand you," Claire corrects. "There's a difference." "There are things about me you don't need to understand," Arthur replies, his voice taking on a tone of authority she hadn't heard before. "And there are boundaries that shouldn't be crossed." The change in his manner catches her off guard. Suddenly he's no longer the gentle, vulnerable man who cried while talking about his dead wife. He's someone accustomed to giving orders and expecting obedience. "I'm sorry," Claire says, but there's a spark of rebellion in her voice she can't completely suppress. "I didn't know asking questions was against the rules." "It's not," Arthur says, relaxing slightly, "but there are things about Helen, about our life together, that are very painful for me. I'd rather not talk about them." It's a reasonable explanation, and Claire feels she should accept it and move on. But something in the way he avoids her eyes, how his fingers twitch nervously on the table, suggests there's more to the story. "All right," she says finally. "Sorry for being invasive." Arthur smiles, but the smile doesn't reach his eyes. "You weren't being invasive, you were being curious, it's natural." They finish eating and go to bed, but Claire feels a shift in the dynamic between them. There's a tension that wasn't there before, an awareness that there is forbidden territory she must not explore. When Arthur sleeps, Claire lies awake, staring at the ceiling. Helen's photo is on the bedside table, and even in the dark, Claire can feel the dead woman's eyes watching her. There are so many unanswered questions, so many pieces that don't fit. Why did Arthur choose her specifically? How did he know what size clothes she wore? Why keep a secret apartment filled with memories of his dead wife? And why, every time Claire asks a question about Helen, does she get the feeling she's getting closer to something Arthur desperately doesn't want her to discover? The next few days pass in a kind of tense truce. Arthur continues to show up at 2 in the afternoon. They make love, talk about superficial things, have dinner together. But Claire notices that he watches her more carefully now, as if evaluating every word she says, every move she makes. She tries to convince herself that she's being paranoid, that the mysteries surrounding Helen are just the result of a man's grief over losing the person he loved. But at night, when she's alone, Claire can't stop thinking about the dedication on the sheet music, the clothes in the closet that fit her perfectly, the way Arthur sometimes looks at her as if he's seeing a ghost. A week after finding Helen's photo, Claire decides to explore the apartment more deeply. She knows it's risky, that Arthur has made it clear there are boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. But curiosity is stronger than fear. In the bedroom closet, behind a row of expensive dresses, Claire finds a small box hidden on a high shelf. Inside the box are more photos of Helen, some alone, others with Arthur. In one of the photos, Helen is sitting at the piano playing, a soft smile on her face as she looks at the person taking the picture, presumably Arthur. But it's the last photo in the box that makes Claire's blood run cold. It's a photo of Helen sitting on a park bench, reading a book. She looks younger, perhaps in her early 20s, and is wearing simple clothes, jeans and a basic top. More importantly, she is sitting in front of a bookstore that Claire recognizes immediately. It's the same bookstore where Arthur found her. Claire feels her hands shaking as she examines the photo more closely. It can't be a coincidence. It can't be by chance that Arthur found his current mistress in the exact same place where he once photographed his dead wife. Suddenly, all the pieces start to fit together in a terrifying way. The resemblance between them that Claire felt from the first moment, the clothes that fit perfectly, the way Arthur sometimes looks at her as if he's seeing someone else. Claire isn't an accidental substitute for Helen. She was carefully chosen, carefully placed in that spot at that moment so that Arthur could find her in the same way he once found his wife. The question that now terrifies her is simple. If Helen died in an accident, what will happen to Claire when Arthur tires of his replacement version? Claire puts the photos back in the box with trembling hands and returns to the living room. She sits on the sofa trying to process what she's discovered, trying to decide what to do with this information. Confronting Arthur would be dangerous, but pretending she knows nothing could be even more dangerous. When Arthur arrives that afternoon, Claire forces a smile and acts as if nothing has changed, but inside she is calculating, planning, trying to figure out how to escape a trap she only now realizes has held her since the first day. As he touches her, as he whispers soft words in her ear, Claire can't stop thinking about the photo of Helen at the bookstore. She can't stop wondering how many other women there were before her, how many other vulnerable young women Arthur found in moments of despair and brought to this apartment to relive whatever disturbing fantasy haunts him. And, most importantly, she can't stop wondering if any of them made it out alive. Claire spends the next few days in a state of constant alert. Every smile from Arthur, every gentle touch, every affectionate word now carries a shadow of suspicion. She becomes an actress in her own life, feigning normality, while her mind works feverishly to understand what is really happening. Arthur seems not to notice anything different, or perhaps he is so good at hiding his own emotions that he can't perceive when others are doing the same. He continues to appear religiously at 2 in the afternoon, continues to be kind and attentive, continues to make love to her with the same growing intensity that has confused her since the first day. But Claire now sees everything with different eyes. She notices how he sometimes whispers Helen softly when he thinks she isn't listening. She notices how his hands sometimes hesitate mid-caress, as if remembering another body. She notices how he looks at her in the moments just after orgasm with an expression of pained surprise, as if he has momentarily forgotten that she is not someone else. One rainy Tuesday, Claire decides she needs more answers. Arthur left earlier than usual, claiming an urgent meeting, and for the first time in weeks she has the apartment completely to herself for several hours. It's the opportunity she's been waiting for to conduct a more thorough investigation. She starts with the small office she had so far avoided exploring. It's an austere room, with a dark wood desk, shelves filled with organized files and a computer that is always password protected. But Claire isn't interested in the computer. She's looking for something more personal, more revealing. In the desk drawers, she finds mostly financial documents and business contracts. Arthur is even wealthier than she imagined. His company, Blackwood Investments, has tentacles in dozens of different sectors. But among the business papers, Claire finds a file different from the others. The file has no label, and when Claire opens it, her heart pounds. Inside are letters, dozens of them, all written in the delicate handwriting she has learned to recognize as Helen's. The letters are addressed simply to A and dated over several months, ending abruptly 2 years ago. Claire takes the letters to the living room and settles on the sofa to read them. The first ones are affectionate, typical correspondence between a husband and wife. Helen talks about her daily life, about small plans for the future, about how much she loves Arthur and how grateful she is to have found him. But as Claire progresses through the chronology, the tone of the letters changes drastically. Helen begins to mention strange coincidences, feelings of being watched, the discovery of objects in places she doesn't remember putting them. She writes about disturbing dreams and a growing sense that something in her life is not right. It is in a letter dated 8 months before Helen's death that Claire sees her own name for the first time. My dearest A, something very strange happened today. I was walking down Shaftesbury Avenue when I saw a girl sitting in front of the old bookstore. She was reading, and there was something about her that made me stop and watch. When she looked up and saw me, I swear I felt like I was looking into a distorted mirror, not in physical appearance, but something deeper. I asked some people in the area about her and found out her name is Claire. She's an orphan living on the streets since she lost her family. A, I know you'll think I'm crazy, but I can't stop thinking about this girl. There's something about her that deeply unsettles me, as if she's a piece of a puzzle I don't understand. I need to know more about her. Claire feels her hands trembling as she rereads the letter several times. Helen knew of her existence. More than that, Helen was intrigued by her in the same mysterious way that Arthur would later be. The following letters become increasingly disturbing. Helen writes about secretly investigating Claire's life, about discovering details of her childhood, about a growing obsession with the young woman that she can't explain. But what's most disturbing is how Helen starts connecting Claire to her own life. I discovered something impossible about Claire. She has a scar on her left hip, in the exact same spot as mine. I know it sounds crazy, but I managed to see it when she was washing in the fountain in the square. How is that possible? How can two people have identical scars in the exact same place? Claire lets the letter fall from her hands. Her hip scar has always been a mystery to her. A small, crescent moon-shaped mark her mother said was from a fall when she was a baby. But if Helen had an identical scar, she quickly searches for more letters mentioning the scar and finds one that sends a chill down her spine. I can no longer pretend this is a coincidence. The scar, the age Claire would be if she were my sister's daughter, the way my father always acted strangely when I asked about family. I need to know the truth. I need to know if Claire is who I think she is, and if she is, I need to know why you never told me. Claire reads and rereads this letter, trying to process the implications. Helen suspected Claire might be her niece, the daughter of a sister she apparently didn't know, and Arthur knew about this. The last letter in the file is dated just 1 week before Helen's death, and it is by far the most disturbing. I know. I found out everything. I know about my father's company. I know about the monthly payments to Claire's mother. I know about you and him knowing each other for much longer than you told me. I know that Claire is my half-sister, and I know you've known this from the beginning. The question that keeps me awake at night is why? Why did you marry me knowing she existed? Why did you lie to me about knowing my father? And why in recent weeks have you been asking about her as if you knew nothing? Arthur, I love you, but I'm starting to be afraid of you. There's something in your eyes when you talk about Claire, something that makes me think our marriage was never about me. It was always about her. Claire feels nausea rising in her throat. The letters tell a story she doesn't want to believe, but one that explains everything she has observed. Arthur didn't find her by chance. He was specifically looking for her, and for reasons that have to do with Helen and family secrets Claire never even knew existed. She's about to search for more evidence when she hears the key in the elevator. Quickly, Claire puts the letters back in the file and rushes to place it in the drawer where she found it. When Arthur appears at the living room door, she is sitting on the sofa pretending to read a book, but her heart is beating so hard she's sure he can hear it. "Are you all right?" Arthur asks, studying her face. "You look pale." "Just a little tired," Claire lies, forcing a smile. "How was your meeting?" Arthur sits beside her and pulls her into a hug, but Claire has to force herself not to shrink from his touch. Now that she knows he's been lying about everything from day one, every touch feels like a violation. "It was productive," Arthur replies, kissing her neck. "We closed an important deal. We'll celebrate tonight." Claire nods and forces herself to return his kiss when he tilts her face to meet his lips. But inside, she is planning. She needs to get out of this apartment, away from Arthur, at least long enough to process what she's discovered and decide what to do. That night, during dinner at an expensive restaurant in Knightsbridge, Claire watches Arthur with entirely new eyes. He tells stories about his business, makes gentle jokes, treats the waiters with polite courtesy. To any casual observer, he is a successful, charming man dining with an attractive young woman. But Claire now sees the performance behind the facade. "Arthur," she says during dessert, testing the waters, "have you ever told me how you met Helen?" He stops eating and looks at her with a carefully neutral expression. "We met at a business party. Why do you ask?" "Just curious," Claire replies, watching how he avoids specific details. "Were you together for a long time before you got married?" "A few years," Arthur says vaguely. "Claire, I'd rather not talk much about Helen. As I said before, it's very painful." It's the same answer as always, but now Claire sees through it. Arthur doesn't want to talk about Helen because the true story would reveal his lies. The next day, Claire makes a risky decision. She needs to know more about her own history, about the payments her mother received, about the connection to Helen. And for that, she needs to leave the apartment and do some research on her own. When Arthur arrives at 2 in the afternoon, Claire is dressed and ready to go. "I need to take care of a few things," she says. "Documents, bureaucratic matters about my previous situation. Things I should have dealt with a long time ago." Arthur frowns. What kind of matters? Nothing important, Claire lies. Just paperwork. It shouldn't take more than a few hours. She sees hesitation on his face, as if he's calculating the risks of letting her go out alone. But he can't forbid her without revealing the true level of control he exerts over the situation. All right, he finally agrees. But be back before dark. London can be dangerous for a woman alone. Claire nods and kisses his cheek, forcing herself to act normally. But when the elevator doors close between them, she finally breathes a sigh of relief. Her first stop is the civil registry office in the city centre. With the few documents she managed to keep during her months on the street, Claire requests a new copy of her full birth certificate. What she sees shocks her. In the father field, where there had always been just a blank line, there is now a name, Edward Sinclair. The surname Sinclair is common enough, but the name Edward awakens a vague memory. Claire remembers her mother mentioning that name a few times, always in whispers, always with a mixed expression of sadness and anger. Now she has a lead to follow. Her second stop is the municipal library, where she uses the public computers to research Edward Sinclair. What she discovers makes her dizzy. Edward was a wealthy and powerful businessman who died 5 years ago. He had several companies and investments, including a long-standing partnership with a company called Blackwood Investments, Arthur's company. Claire prints all the articles she can find about Edward and takes them to a nearby cafe to study more carefully. The pieces of the puzzle begin to fit together in a terrifying way. Edward was the father of both Helen and Claire, but apparently only Helen was officially recognized. The monthly payments Claire's mother received were a form of unofficial child support, probably to ensure she wouldn't cause problems for the legitimate family. She is so absorbed in her reading that she barely notices when someone sits at the table next to hers in the cafe. Only when the man leans in and whispers her name does she look up, startled. "Claire? You are Claire, aren't you?" The man looks to be about 40, with brown hair streaked with grey and kind eyes behind discreet glasses. There's something in his expression, a mixture of relief and concern, that immediately puts Claire on edge. "Who's asking?" she replies cautiously. "My name is Raphael Cole. I'm a psychologist. I was seeing Helen in the months before her death." The name rings like an alarm bell in Claire's mind. This is the man who might have answers about what really happened to Helen. "What do you want with me?" she asks, looking around nervously as if expecting Arthur to appear at any moment. "I need to talk to you about Arthur Blackwood," Raphael says softly, leaning closer. "Helen told me about you before she died. She was worried. She was afraid something might happen to you." Claire feels a shiver run down her spine. "What kind of thing?" Raphael looks around cautiously before answering. "Not here. It's too dangerous. But I need you to know that you are in danger, great danger. Helen discovered things about Arthur, about what he's capable of. That got her killed." Raphael's words confirm Claire's worst fears. Helen didn't die in an accident. She was murdered for discovering Arthur's secrets. "How did you find me?" Claire asks. "I've been watching you for weeks," Raphael admits. "I knew Arthur would eventually find you. Helen told me where to look. She was sure you would be next." Claire feels the world spinning around her. Everything, from the moment she first saw Arthur in front of the bookstore, was orchestrated. She is not a random victim. She is the specific target of an obsession that has already killed one person. "What should I do?" she whispers. "Leave. Immediately," Raphael replies. "But you have to be smart. Arthur is powerful. He has connections. If he realizes you know the truth, you'll end up like Helen." Raphael slides a card across the table. "This is my address. Come and find me when you can. I have things Helen asked me to give you if anything happened to her." Before Claire can ask more questions, Raphael stands up and quickly leaves the cafe, leaving her alone with revelations that change everything. Claire looks at the card in her hands, and then at the articles about Edward spread across the table. Now she knows the truth. Arthur married Helen knowing she was Claire's half-sister. He used the marriage to get closer to the family, to find out more about Claire, perhaps even to plan the right moment to find her. And when Helen discovered his game, she paid with her life. The question now is, can Claire escape before Arthur decides she too knows too much? She checks the time and realizes she needs to head back to the apartment soon. Arthur will get suspicious if she's gone too long. But now Claire knows she is returning to a trap and that every moment she spends with him could be her last. Claire returns to the Mayfair apartment, with her heart pounding and her mind reeling from the disturbing revelations. She needs to act normally for at least a few more hours until she can find a safe opportunity to escape or confront Arthur with what she's discovered. But with every minute she spends beside him, knowing what she now knows, it becomes harder to hide her growing anxiety. Arthur greets her with a smile that she once would have found affectionate, but now sees as calculated. He asks about her bureaucratic matters, with a casualness that sounds forced to Claire's ears. She invents vague answers about documents and protocols, watching as he absorbs every word, clearly assessing if there's any reason for suspicion. "For you seem tense," Arthur comments during dinner, studying her face over his wine glass. "Was the red tape stressful?" "A little," Claire replies, forcing herself to eat despite the knot in her stomach. "You know how official things are. Lots of protocol, lots of waiting." Arthur nods, but she notices his eyes don't leave her for the entire meal. It's as if he's searching for signs that something has changed, that she's discovered something she shouldn't know. Later, when they make love, Claire has to force herself to respond to his caresses. Every touch now feels like a violation, every kiss a lie. She closes her eyes and tries to dissociate, thinking of Helen's letters, her meeting with Raphael, the terrible truth that is unfolding about her own life. It is during this intimate moment that something happens that changes everything. Arthur is kissing her neck when his hand slides down her hip, stopping directly over her crescent moon-shaped scar. He remains still for a few seconds, and Claire feels his breathing change, becoming heavier and more irregular. "Arthur," she whispers, opening her eyes. He pulls back slightly and looks at her with an expression she has never seen before, a mixture of pain, desire, and something that could be guilt. "Your scar," he murmurs, tracing the small mark with his finger. "How did you get it?" "My mother always said it was from a fall when I was a baby," Claire replies, watching his reaction closely. "Why?" For a long moment, Arthur doesn't answer. He continues to stare at the scar, as if it were something both precious and terrible. When he finally speaks, his voice is thick with emotion. "Helen had an identical one. In the same place." Claire feigns surprise, though she already knew this from the letters. "Really, what a strange coincidence." "It's not a coincidence," Arthur replies, and there's something in his voice that tells Claire he's about to reveal something important. "Claire, there are things about you, about your family, that you don't know." Claire's heart races. Finally, he's going to tell the truth. Arthur sits up in bed, running his hands through his hair in a gesture of agitation she's never seen before. "Your father, your biological father, was Edward Sinclair." Claire forces an expression of confusion. "Who?" "A very powerful businessman. He died a few years ago," Arthur continues. "Edward was a business partner of mine for a long time, and Helen's father." The confession hangs in the air between them. Claire processes the words, feigning shock, while inside she feels a mixture of relief and terror. Relief at finally hearing the truth from Arthur, terror for what it might mean for her safety. "You're saying Helen was my sister?" she asks, her voice trembling with genuine emotion. "Half-sister," Arthur corrects. "You had the same father, different mothers. Edward had an affair with your mother years before Helen was born. When your mother found out she was pregnant, Edward was already politically and socially committed to Helen's family. He couldn't officially acknowledge you without causing a scandal." Claire sits up in bed, pulling the sheets up to cover her body. "So he just ignored me?" "Not exactly," Arthur replies, avoiding her gaze. "He made sure you and your mother received financial support, monthly payments, private school when you were a child, health insurance. He took care of you from a distance." "How do you know all this?" Claire asks, though she already suspects the answer. Arthur is silent for several minutes. When he finally responds, it's with a brutal honesty that catches her off guard. "Because I helped arrange the payments. Edward asked me to be the intermediary to ensure the money reached you without being traced back to him. I've known about your existence for years, Claire, long before Helen found out." The confession is like a punch to the gut. Claire feels nausea rising in her throat. "You knew about me before you found me on the street?" "I knew of you," Arthur corrects. "We had never met in person, but Edward had me prepare regular reports on your life. How you were doing in school, if you were healthy, if your mother needed anything extra. You were a subject of interest to him." Claire feels the world spinning. And Helen? Did she know? She found out a few months before she died, Arthur admits. Edward left some documents poorly secured. Helen found them by accident and confronted both me and him. It was a very difficult situation. Difficult how? Claire presses. Arthur gets up and walks to the window, his back to her. Helen became obsessed with you after she found out. She wanted to meet you, to bring you into our family officially. Edward was horrified by the possibility. He was still afraid of the scandal even after all those years. And you? What did you want? I didn't know what I wanted, Arthur replies, his voice growing quieter. All I knew was that Helen was changing, becoming obsessive, paranoid. She started following you, taking pictures of you, investigating your life. It was destroying our marriage. Claire feels a shiver. The letters she found mentioned Helen's obsession with her, but hearing it from Arthur's perspective makes it all the more real and disturbing. Is that why she died? Claire asks directly. Because of this obsession? Arthur turns to look at her, and Claire sees tears in his eyes. Helen was becoming unstable. She threatened to expose everything. Your existence, the payments, the partnership between me and Edward. She said she didn't care about the consequences, that you had the right to know who your father was. And was that enough of a problem to kill her? Claire asks, her voice sharp. It wasn't like that, Arthur explodes, turning to face her completely. Helen wasn't murdered, Claire. She committed suicide. She overdosed on antidepressants because she couldn't handle the pressure, the secrets, the guilt of having kept you away from the family for so long. The explanation sounds rehearsed, as if Arthur has repeated it so many times he started to believe it. But Claire remembers Raphael's words, Helen's suspicions expressed in her final letters. And after she died, you decided to look for me, Claire says. It's not a question. Not immediately, Arthur replies. I needed time to process everything, to understand what Helen had discovered. But yes, eventually I felt I had a responsibility to you. Edward was dead, Helen was dead, you were the only family left. Family? Claire laughs bitterly. Is this how you treat family? Find them on the street and offer them sex in exchange for shelter. Arthur seems genuinely hurt by the accusation. It wasn't like that. When I finally found you, you were in a terrible situation. Alone, hungry, vulnerable. I wanted to help, but I didn't know how to approach you with the truth. How to explain that I knew who you were, that I had been married to your half-sister you never even knew existed. So you created a fantasy, Claire completes. A rich, powerful man who falls for a helpless young woman. Very romantic. It wasn't a fantasy, Arthur protests, moving closer to her. My feelings for you are real, Claire. Maybe they started out of guilt or responsibility, but they've become so much more than that. Claire studies him intently. There is genuine emotion in his voice, real tears in his eyes. Part of her wants to believe that at least the feelings are true, but another part, the part that read Helen's letters, that spoke with Raphael, knows she can't trust anything he says. The scar, she says suddenly. How can Helen and I have identical scars in the same place? Arthur hesitates before answering. You both suffered the same type of accident as babies. Helen fell down a flight of stairs when she was 8 months old. You fell out of a bed at the same age. Both of you hit the same kind of corner at the same angle. It's a plausible explanation, but Claire feels there's something more. The way Arthur averts his gaze when talking about the scars suggests he's omitting part of the truth. Arthur, she says softly, touching his arm, I need to know everything. All the truths, all the lies. If you really love me, if you really want this to work between us, there can be no more secrets. For a moment she sees something break in his face. A genuine vulnerability that is perhaps the first truly honest thing he has shown since they met. There is one thing, he admits finally. About the scars. They weren't accidents. Claire feels her blood run cold. What do you mean? Edward was disturbed, Arthur explains slowly. He had strange obsessions, private rituals. When Helen was born, he made a mark on her. Said it was so he could always identify her as his no matter what happened. He marked her on purpose, Claire whispers, horrified, with a small knife when she was too young to remember. And when you were born, he did the same thing, the same mark in the same place, so that you would always have this connection, even if you never met. The revelation is so disturbing that Claire feels the urge to be sick. Her own father branded her as if she were livestock, made her carry a scar that connected her to a half-sister she never knew. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" she asks, her voice barely a whisper. "Because it's sick," Arthur replies. "Because Edward was clearly mentally unwell, and I didn't want you to know your father was capable of something like that." Claire remains silent for several minutes, processing everything she's heard. The truth is worse than she imagined. Not only was she raised on lies, but she was literally marked from infancy, as part of some sick psychological game by her biological father. "Claire," Arthur says softly, sitting on the bed beside her, "I know this is a lot to take in. I know you must hate me right now. But I need you to understand that everything I did was to protect you." "Protect me?" Claire laughs bitterly. "By lying about everything." "Protect you from the truth," Arthur replies. "From the pain of knowing what Edward was really like, from the trauma of discovering about Helen the wrong way. I wanted you to have a normal life, a happy life, away from all these sick secrets." It's an explanation that might sound noble, if not for the fact that Claire now knows Arthur has his own secrets, his own obsessions. Helen's letters made it clear that she feared her own husband in the last days of her life. "Arthur," Claire says carefully, "did Helen really commit suicide? Or is there something else you're not telling me?" The question hangs in the air between them like an accusation. Claire sees something shift in Arthur's face, the vulnerability being replaced by something harder, more calculated. "Of course she committed suicide," he replies, but his voice has lost the genuine emotion of moments before. "Why would you ask something like that?" "Because I found her letters," Claire says simply. The silence that follows is deafening. Arthur becomes completely still, as if turned to stone. When he finally speaks, his voice is dangerously calm. "What letters?" "The letters she wrote to you." "All of them, including the last one where she says she's afraid of you." Claire sees the exact moment Arthur realizes the game has changed, that she knows far more than he imagined. The mask of pain and vulnerability disappears completely, replaced by something cold and calculated that she has never seen before. "Where did you find those letters?" he asks. "Does it matter?" "It matters because they were private," Arthur replies, rising slowly. "They were personal letters between a husband and wife." "Letters from a dead woman to a husband she thought might kill her," Claire corrects. Arthur stops in the middle of the room and turns to look at her. For the first time since they met, Claire sees who he really is behind all the masks. And what she sees terrifies her. "Claire," he says, his voice taking on a tone she has never heard before, controlled, authoritative, dangerous. "You don't understand the situation you've put yourself in." The change in Arthur's voice is like ice melting in Claire's veins. The gentle, vulnerable man who moments before seemed genuinely emotional when speaking about Helen has completely vanished, replaced by someone she doesn't recognize, someone cold, controlled, dangerous. "What situation?" Claire asks, trying to keep her voice steady despite her growing fear. Arthur walks slowly around the room like a predator assessing its prey. "You've asked too many questions. You've discovered things that should have remained buried. That makes everything complicated." Claire pulls the sheet tighter around her body, suddenly feeling vulnerable in her nakedness. "Complicated how?" "Helen also asked too many questions," Arthur replies, stopping before the window that overlooks London. "She also discovered things she shouldn't have known. You saw how that ended for her." The implied threat in the sentence makes Claire's blood run cold. "You killed her." "No." Arthur turns to look at her, and Claire sees something in his eyes that terrifies her. "Helen killed herself, but only because she understood it was the only way out." "Out of what?" "Out of me," Arthur replies simply. "Out of us." "Out of what she had discovered about our relationship." Claire feels nausea rising in her throat. "What relationship? You were married." Arthur laughs, but it's a humorless sound, heavy with bitterness. "Married? Yes, technically we were married. But our marriage was never about Helen, Claire. It was always about you." The words echo in Claire's mind like a death sentence. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I married Helen to get to you," Arthur replies with brutal honesty. "Edward told me about your existence years before Helen was born. He showed me pictures of you as a child, talked about how special you were, how different. I fell in love with the idea of you before you even became a woman." Claire feels as if the world is collapsing around her. "That's sick." "It's obsession," Arthur corrects. and obsession can seem sick to those who don't understand it. But when you finally saw me that morning, when you looked at me with those sad, intelligent eyes, I knew it had all been worth it. All the years of waiting, all the planning, all the sacrifice. What sacrifice? Helen, Arthur replies without hesitation. She was just a means to an end, a way to get closer to your family, to understand your history, to be ready for when you finally needed me. The confession is so disturbing that Claire struggles to process it. You used my half-sister to get to me. I used her, loved her, and eventually had to let her go, Arthur confirms. Helen was a good person, but she wasn't you. She could never be you. Claire gets up from the bed, still wrapped in the sheet, trying to put physical distance between herself and Arthur. You're sick, completely deranged. I'm in love, Arthur corrects, approaching her slowly. There's a difference. True love doesn't recognize conventional moral boundaries. True love doesn't kill innocent people. Helen wasn't innocent, Arthur replies, his voice hardening. She found out about my obsession with you and threatened to expose everything. She said she was going to tell you who I really was, that she was going to ruin any chance we had of being together. She became an obstacle. Claire backs away until her back is against the wall, realizing there's nowhere to run. So you killed her. I convinced her that life was no longer worth living, Arthur replies. I showed her the pictures I had of you, the videos I'd secretly filmed over all those years. I explained that my love for you was eternal and unshakable, that nothing she could do would change that. Helen realized she was fighting a battle she couldn't win. His words confirmed Claire's worst fears. Arthur not only killed Helen, he psychologically tortured her until she chose death as her only escape. You filmed her. You filmed me, Claire asks, feeling vomit rise in her throat. For years, Arthur admits without any sign of shame. Since you were a teenager, I had to document your life, understand your patterns, be ready for when the right moment came. The revelation is so violating that Claire feels her legs weaken. Where? How? Everywhere. At school, on the street, when you worked your temp jobs. I have hours of footage of you, Claire. I know you better than you know yourself. Claire slides down the wall to the floor, hugging her knees. The magnitude of the violation, of the years of secret stalking, is too much to process. Why? Why me? Arthur kneels in front of her, trying to touch her face, but Claire recoils violently. Because you're perfect, he says. Because from the moment Edward showed me your picture when you were 12, I knew you were the one I was destined to love. I was 12, Claire screams. You're a sick pedophile. No, Arthur protests vehemently. I never touched you when you were a minor. I never even thought of you in a sexual way until you became an adult. My love for you was pure, based on your intelligence, your strength, your inner beauty. Your love is a disease, Claire responds. It's stalking, it's harassment, it's murder. It's destiny, Arthur corrects. And now that we're finally together, nothing and no one will ever tear us apart. The implied threat makes Claire realize she needs to find a way out of there. Arthur clearly has no intention of letting her go now that she knows the truth. She is the next Helen, the next woman who will commit suicide when she becomes inconvenient. Arthur, she says, forcing her voice to remain calm, I understand that you feel something strong for me, but this is all a lot to process at once. I need time to think. Something changes in his expression. The obsessive intensity is replaced by a calculating coldness. Time to think, or time to plan your escape? Claire realizes she hasn't hidden her intentions as well as she'd hoped. To think, she repeats, about us, about the future. No, Arthur stands up and walks to the living room door. There will be no more time alone, no more unsupervised outings. You will stay here with me until you understand that this is where you belong. The reality of the situation hits her like a blow. She is officially a prisoner. And if I don't want to stay, she asks, already knowing the answer. Then you will have to learn to want to, Arthur replies, just like Helen had to learn, though in the end she chose a more dramatic solution. Claire closes her eyes, trying to think of a way out. It's then that she remembers the card Raphael gave her, still hidden in the pocket of the trousers she wore earlier. If she can just get to him. Can I at least get dressed? She asks. Arthur nods and steps aside, but Claire notices he watches her intently as she heads to the bedroom. As she grabs her clothes, she discreetly palms Raphael's card, hiding it in her hand. It's while she's dressing that Claire notices something she hadn't seen before. The piano in the living room. She had always assumed it was just decorative, that the keys were too dusty to play. But now, looking more closely, she realizes there's something odd about the way the lid is positioned. "Arthur," she calls out, trying to keep her voice casual. "Didn't you say you played the piano?" "I said I don't play," he replies from the living room. "But there's sheet music on the piano. Debussy." A long silence follows. When Arthur finally responds, his voice sounds different. That was Helen's. She enjoyed playing. Claire knows he's lying again. In the letters, Helen mentioned that it was Arthur who played the piano, not her. But more importantly, Claire realizes there's something hidden in the piano, something Arthur doesn't want her to discover. When she returns to the living room, fully dressed, Claire forces a smile. "Could you play something for me, a song that Helen liked?" "I don't play anymore," Arthur replies quickly. "Not since she died." "Please," Claire insists, moving toward the piano. "I'd like to hear something that meant something to you both." She sees hesitation on his face. Arthur clearly doesn't want her near the piano, but he can't find a way to refuse without seeming suspicious. "All right," he finally agrees. "One quick song." Arthur sits at the piano and begins to play Clair de Lune. His hands move over the keys with obvious familiarity. This is a man who has clearly played for years, not someone who learned just to impress his wife. While he plays, Claire discreetly examines the piano more closely. That's when she notices that one of the side panels is slightly loose, as if it has been removed and replaced multiple times. When Arthur is particularly focused on a complex passage, Claire quickly presses the panel. It gives way, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside is a small leather-bound diary, clearly old and well-handled. Claire manages to grab it and hide it under her shirt before Arthur finishes the song. "That was beautiful," she says when he stops playing. Arthur looks at her with a strange expression. Helen used to say the same thing. That night, when Arthur finally falls asleep, always a heavy sleeper she'd noticed, Claire pulls out the hidden diary and opens it with trembling hands. What she finds inside makes her blood run cold. The diary belongs to Helen, but the entries are very different from the letters. Here, Helen documents her discoveries about Arthur's obsession with Claire in terrifying detail. "Doesn't know I found the recordings," one entry reads. "Hours and hours of footage of C since she was a child. He's followed her, filmed her, documented every moment of her life. There are pictures of her sleeping taken through her bedroom window. There are audio recordings of her private conversations with her mother. This isn't love. It's sick stalking." Claire has to stop reading for a moment to keep from being sick. The idea that Arthur had been watching her for so long, violating her privacy in such intimate ways, is almost unbearable. Another entry. "I confronted A about C today. He didn't deny anything. He said he married me only to get closer to her family, that he always knew she would be his one day. When I asked what would happen to me when that day came, he didn't answer. I'm starting to be afraid to sleep in the same bed as him." The last entry is dated the day before Helen's death. "Showed me the new recordings of C. She's living on the streets now, vulnerable and alone. He said it's the perfect time to rescue her. When I asked if he planned to get rid of me, he smiled in a way that terrified me. I have to warn C somehow. I have to—" The entry ends abruptly, as if Helen was interrupted. Claire closes the diary, her hands shaking violently. Now she has definitive proof not only that Arthur drove Helen to her death, but that he meticulously planned everything for years. She isn't a random victim. She is the target of a sick obsession that has already cost one life. She looks at Arthur sleeping beside her and realizes she is sharing a bed with a murderer. Worse, a murderer who has already shown he is willing to kill anyone who gets between him and his obsession with her. Claire has to get out of there. Tonight. Before Arthur realizes she's found the diary, before he decides that she, like Helen, knows too much to stay alive. But first, she needs to make sure Arthur pays for what he's done. Helen deserves justice, and other women need to be protected from his sick obsession. Claire takes Raphael's card and Helen's diary. This time, when she leaves the apartment, she won't be coming back. No matter what it costs, no matter how dangerous Arthur is, she will not be the next Helen. She will not let his obsession destroy her, as it destroyed her half-sister. Claire waits until she is certain Arthur is in a deep sleep before she moves. It's almost 3 in the morning, and his breathing is heavy and regular. With extremely careful movements, she gets out of bed, silently gathers her clothes and gets dressed in the bathroom. Helen's diary and Raphael's card are secure in her jacket pocket. She knows she only has one chance. If Arthur wakes up and discovers she's trying to escape, there won't be a second opportunity. The coldness she saw in his eyes earlier made it clear he is capable of anything to keep her under his control. Claire manages to reach the living room without a sound, but just as she's about to call the elevator, she hears Arthur's voice behind her. "I thought you might try this." She turns slowly to find him standing at the entrance to the room, fully dressed. There is no anger on his face, just a disturbing calm that is far worse. "How did you—" Claire begins. "I wasn't asleep," Arthur replies simply. "I was waiting to see what you would do, waiting to see if you would choose me or if you would choose to run away like a coward." "Running from a murderer isn't cowardice," Claire retorts, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's survival." "Murderer," Arthur repeats as if tasting the word. "Interesting how you see things. I prefer to think of myself as someone who removes obstacles from the path of true love. Helen wasn't an obstacle. She was a person. She was a person who was trying to separate me from you," Arthur corrects, walking slowly toward her. "Just as you're trying to separate yourself from me now. But I won't let that happen, Claire. Not after I've waited so long." Claire backs against the wall, realizing she's cornered. "What are you going to do? Kill me too?" For a moment, something that could be pain flashes across Arthur's face. "I don't want to hurt you, I never have. All I've ever wanted is to love you, protect you, take care of you in the way you deserve." "This isn't love," Claire says. "It's obsession. It's control. It's violence." "It's the purest kind of love there is," Arthur counters. "Love without conditions, without limits, without compromise. How many people can say someone loves them enough to kill for them?" His twisted logic is terrifying because Claire can see he genuinely believes what he is saying. In his disturbed mind, driving Helen to suicide was an act of love for Claire. It's at this moment that Claire makes a desperate decision. If she's going to die anyway, she will at least confront him with the whole truth first. "I know about the diary," she says. Arthur stops walking. "What diary?" "Helen's diary. The one you hid in the piano. I read all of it." His face turns pale. "Impossible. I burned that diary." "You burned a diary," Claire corrects, pulling the leather-bound journal from her pocket. "But Helen was smarter than you thought. She hid the real one." Arthur stares at the diary in Claire's hands, as if he's seeing a ghost. "Give that to me." "No. Claire, give me the diary now." "Or what? You'll kill me like you killed Helen?" "I didn't kill Helen," Arthur explodes, losing his control for the first time. "Helen killed herself because she couldn't accept that my heart belonged to someone else." "Helen killed herself because you terrorized her, until she felt she had no other choice," Claire retorts. "You psychologically tortured her, showed her evidence of your sick obsession with me, made her understand she would never be safe as long as I existed." Tears begin to stream down Arthur's face. "You don't understand. I tried to love Helen. I tried to be a good husband to her, but every time I looked at her I could only think of you. Every time I touched her it was your body I imagined in my arms." "That doesn't justify what you did to her. It justifies everything," Arthur screams. "The heart doesn't choose who to love. I didn't choose to fall in love with you when you were just a child. I didn't choose to spend years dreaming of the day you would be mine. I didn't choose to have to live a lie with Helen while I waited for you." Claire sees the genuine pain in his eyes, but she also sees the madness. Arthur truly believes his obsession with her justifies any action, no matter how terrible. "Arthur," she says softly, trying a different approach, "what if there was another way? A way for us to be together without more death, without more lies?" Something shifts in his expression. "What kind of way?" "The truth," Claire replies. "All of it. To the authorities, to the families, to everyone. You confess what you did to Helen. You accept the consequences, and maybe I could visit you. Maybe we could build something real from honesty." For a moment Claire sees hope in Arthur's eyes, but then he shakes his head. "No. If I confess, they'll lock me away for the rest of my life. We could never be together again. And if you kill me, we can never be together anyway," Claire points out. "At least my way there's a chance for a future." Arthur seems genuinely tortured by the choice. Claire realizes this is her only chance, the moment when he is most vulnerable, most open to persuasion. That's when Claire's phone rings. The sudden, unexpected sound makes Arthur jump, his paranoid instincts immediately kicking in. Who is that? Claire looks at the phone and sees a number she doesn't recognize, but then she remembers. Raphael said he would contact her if she didn't show up. It's probably just a sales call, she lies. Answer it, Arthur orders. On speaker. Claire answers the phone with trembling hands. Raphael's voice echoes through the room. Claire? Are you all right? I'm worried. You said you were coming to see me tonight. Arthur's face shuts down completely. Who is this man? Raphael Cole, the voice continues, the psychologist who was seeing Helen. Claire, if you are in danger, just say yes and I will call the police. Arthur snatches the phone from Claire's hand before she can answer. Dr. Cole, he says with an icy calm. What an interesting coincidence. Arthur, Raphael replies, and Claire can hear the tension in his voice. I figured you were behind this. Let Claire go immediately. I can't do that, Arthur replies. Claire is mine now, just as Helen was yours for a time. Helen was never mine, Raphael corrects. She was my patient, and I was trying to protect her from you when she died. Helen killed herself because she couldn't accept the reality of our love, Arthur says, looking directly at Claire as he speaks. Helen killed herself because you convinced her it was the only way to protect Claire from you, Raphael responds. But she left me evidence, Arthur. Recordings of her sessions with me, where she described your threats in detail. I've already given everything to the police. Arthur's face goes white. You're lying. I'm 3 blocks from your building with 4 police officers, Raphael continues. Helen gave me the address of the secret apartment where you would take Claire, just as she gave me copies of all the evidence of your obsession with her. Claire sees panic starting to set in Arthur's eyes. For the first time since she met him, he looks genuinely frightened. That's impossible, he whispers. Helen didn't have access to any of that. Helen was smarter than you gave her credit for, Raphael replies. She spent months copying files from your computer, photographing documents, recording conversations. It's all in the hands of the police now. The phone is silent for several seconds. Then Claire hears distant sirens gradually growing louder. Arthur looks at the window and then at Claire, his eyes wild with desperation. No, it can't end like this, not after everything I've done, everything I've sacrificed. Arthur, Claire says softly, there's still time to do the right thing, to confess everything, to finally tell the truth. The truth? He laughs bitterly. The truth is that I love you more than anyone has ever loved another. The truth is I would do it all again if it meant having you. The sirens are very close now. Claire can hear voices in the building's hallway. But you never really had me, Claire says, and there is a genuine sadness in her voice. You had a fantasy, an obsession. If you truly loved me, you would have wanted me to be happy, free, safe. For a moment, something breaks in Arthur's face. The mask of obsession falls away, and Claire sees the devastated man behind it. Someone so lost in his own pain that he forgot how to truly love. I don't know how to do that, he whispers. I don't know how to love any other way. Then learn, Claire replies. In prison, with therapy, with time. Learn the difference between love and possession. The apartment door bursts open as the police storm in. Raphael enters right behind them, running straight to Claire. Are you hurt? He asks, quickly checking her over. No, Claire replies, watching the officers handcuff Arthur. For some reason, seeing him being taken away doesn't bring her the satisfaction she expected. Only a deep sadness for everyone involved. In the months that follow, the story unfolds publicly. Arthur's trial reveals not only the extent of his obsession with Claire, but also disturbing details about Helen's death. The evidence she left with Raphael is overwhelming. Recordings of Arthur describing his obsession, photographs from the hidden cameras he used to film Claire, even confessions of how he manipulated Helen into suicide. Claire testifies at the trial, confronting Arthur one last time. When their eyes meet in the courtroom, she sees that something has changed in him. The wild obsession has been replaced by something different, regret perhaps, or at least an acknowledgement of what he truly did. I'm sorry, he says, when she finishes her testimony, for everything. Claire nods, but doesn't reply. Some wounds are too deep for easy forgiveness. Arthur is sentenced to 25 years to life for inducing Helen's suicide and for charges related to the stalking of Claire. But something unexpected happens during his sentencing. He agrees to participate in an intensive therapy program in prison, finally admitting he needs help to understand his own actions. 2 years later, Claire receives a letter from prison. It's from Arthur, but it's different from anything he's written before. There is no obsession, no declarations of eternal love. Instead, there is a painful honesty about his mistakes, a genuine understanding of the harm he caused, and something that sounds like true remorse. "I'm learning," the letter reads, "that real love means wanting the best for someone, even if it means never seeing them again. I hope you are happy, Claire. I hope you find someone who knows how to love you the right way, with respect, with honesty, with freedom." Claire is surprised to find that the letter moves her. Not because she still feels anything romantic for Arthur, but because she finally sees signs that he might be becoming the person he could have been if he hadn't been consumed by his obsession. She doesn't reply to the letter immediately. Instead, she talks to Raphael, who has become a constant, comforting presence in her life over the past 2 years. He has helped her process the trauma, understand that none of what happened was her fault, and rebuild her life on a solid foundation. "Do you think people can really change?" she asks during one of their regular walks in Hyde Park. "Some can," Raphael answers carefully, "especially when they face the real consequences of their actions. But real change takes time, hard work, and a genuine will to be different." "And what about love? Do you think what Arthur felt for me was ever real?" Raphael stops walking and looks at her seriously. "I think Arthur felt something real, but it wasn't love in the way most people understand it. It was obsession, need, possessiveness, real love. Real love wants what's best for the loved one, even if it means self-sacrifice." Claire nods, processing his words. She thinks of Helen, of the pain she must have felt discovering her marriage was a lie. She thinks of all the women who could have been future victims if Arthur hadn't been stopped. But she also thinks of his last letter, of the genuine evidence of change that his prison therapist reported to the court. 6 months later, Claire makes a decision that surprises even herself. She decides to visit Arthur in prison. When she enters the visiting room and sees him across the table, Claire almost doesn't recognize him. The cold arrogance is gone, replaced by something more humble. He looks older, more tired, but also more human. "I didn't think you'd come," he says when she sits down. "Neither did I," Claire replies honestly. "But I needed to see for myself." "If I've really changed," Arthur asks, "if you understand what you did." Arthur is silent for several minutes before he answers. "I understand that I destroyed the lives of 2 women because I couldn't distinguish between love and possession. I understand that I turned you into an object of my fantasy instead of seeing you as a person. I understand that I killed Helen not with my own hands but with my psychological cruelty." The words are spoken with a devastating simplicity that Claire recognizes as genuine. "And I understand," he continues, "that any real feeling I might have had for you was perverted by my inability to love in a healthy way. You deserved infinitely better." Claire feels tears in her eyes, but they are not tears of sadness. They are tears of relief. Finally, for the first time, she is seeing the man Arthur could have been if he hadn't been consumed by his own unhealed wounds. "Thank you," she says simply. They talk for an hour, and it's the most honest conversation they've ever had. Arthur speaks of his therapy, of learning to deal with his obsessive tendencies, of his hope that one day he can make some kind of amends for the lives he destroyed. Claire talks about her new life, about the university she's gotten into, about her growing friendship with Raphael. When the visit ends, Arthur says something that takes her completely by surprise. "Claire, if I ever get out of here, many years from now, when I've truly become the person I should have been, I'd like you to know that you will always be welcome in my life. Not as an obsession, not as a possession, but as a friend, perhaps, if you'd want that." Claire considers his words carefully. "Maybe," she replies finally, "if you really become that person." "I will," Arthur promises, and for the first time since she met him, Claire believes him. Years later, when Arthur is finally released from prison after serving 15 years of his sentence, granted early parole for good behavior, and exemplary participation in the rehabilitation program, Claire is there to meet him. Not as a lover, not as a victim, but as someone who has seen what true change can do. They don't get together romantically. That would be impossible after everything that happened. But they build a cautious friendship based on honesty and mutual respect. Arthur dedicates his life to working with other men who struggle with obsessive and controlling tendencies. Claire becomes a lawyer specializing in domestic violence cases. They see each other occasionally, always in public, always with others present, and Claire, to her own surprise, finds peace in it. Not because she has completely forgiven, some wounds never fully heal, but because she has seen that even the worst aspects of human nature can be transformed with enough work, enough honesty, and a genuine will to change. The love between them was never real in the traditional sense, but the respect they built, the mutual understanding they developed over the years, is perhaps something more valuable. It is proof that even from the worst beginnings, something good can grow, not the romantic love of novels, but something deeper and more enduring, a form of love that finally honors Helen's memory, that protects other women from future predators, and that allows both Claire and Arthur to live with the peace that only the complete truth can bring.